And we will begin this morning with that much-needed shot in the arm for the Biden campaign. The former vice president dominated in South Carolina's primary on Saturday, running away with 48% of the vote. Bernie Sanders came in a distant second place at 20%, followed by Tom Steyer at 11%, Pete Buttigieg, Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar, and Tulsi Gabbard still in the race, all in single digits. The former vice president pinned his hopes on black voters, and they did not let him down. According to NBC News exit polls, black voters made up 56% of Democratic primary voters in South Carolina, of which Biden took a commanding 61%, including 81% of black voters over the age of 65. In fact, Biden dominated among black voters of all ages, including the youngest, 17 to 29 bracket, which typically goes for Sanders. Also key to Biden's victory, the endorsement of South Carolina Congressman Jim Clyburn. 49% of the voters said his endorsement was important to their vote. As of right now, with 4 states behind us, Biden trails Sanders by 7 delegates, 60 to 53. Biden, however, has now overtaken Sanders in the popular vote. So, Joe, a big weekend for Joe Biden.
Boy, it was a big weekend for the entire Democratic field and the Democratic Party. The results out of South Carolina effectively reset the race, just immediately reset the race. And actually, it proved what a lot of people have been saying for quite some time, that Biden was not going to do well in Iowa. He wasn't going to do well in New Hampshire because they were majority white states, and 90% white, even for those that were voting in the Democratic primary and the caucuses. Those were 2 states that did not reflect the overall demographics of that state. And then you go to Nevada, it's a caucus. It's a strange, weird, bizarre caucus that doesn't reflect actually how votes should turn out in primary races. So this, Reverend Al, was the first primary where you actually had an electorate, a primary electorate that looked like the Democratic Party. And despite the fact there were some polls, including NBC News' polls, that said this was a 4-point race. This wasn't a 4-point race. This was a blowout. And it gave Biden a shot in the arm. It also put the rest of the field on notice and showed, did it not, that, of course, Mayor Pete, who's out of the race, made the wise choice. But Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar, let's just face it, they don't have a future in this race because they couldn't get above 5% of the black vote on Saturday night.
It was very important what happened Saturday night for the reasons you said. And in addition to that, you must remember this was a Saturday primary. So people weren't working, people were not in school. If you had the ability to do a huge turnout, if you had the surge we were hearing that Bernie had, you couldn't have had a better time to demonstrate it. It just didn't happen. And when you look at
Rev,
the fact—
can I stop you there? Rev, we've been hearing now for 4 years, and I'm getting really tired of it. I'm telling my own colleagues, please, don't show me the package that says, but there's a huge gap between old black voters and young black voters. I've seen these Bernie Sanders things on this network and every other network that says, well, yes, well, people just hoping that somehow there's going to be this huge split in the black vote. It never materializes for Bernie. Bernie's not bringing out more people. Bernie's consolidating a certain part of the Democratic base. Not knocking him. He's doing a great job. But that's it. These stories, these are what reporters want the truth to be. It's just not the truth.
No, I think Bernie does an excellent job, but he would do even better if they would be realistic about what they have and what they do not have. When you operate off of faulty information and act like that is true, you won't make up where you ought to make up. And if you look at the data, and I go to Steve Kornacki, who's the expert there, they actually, in terms of black voters under the age of 30, they equaled in South Carolina, which should be a wake-up call to Bernie's operations. I think the other thing that was very important here is that when you see the almost opposite vote in terms of what Biden got in a state that was dominated by black voters and the states and caucuses that were not, it shows you if the Democratic Party is to win in November, they must have an energized black base as well as Latino base. So you've got to look at how that happens, particularly if you're going to deal with the bottom part of the ticket. So I think South Carolina reshaped this race, and I think many people, including those of us in the media, needs to stop wishing for things and start dealing with things. Again, this was a Saturday primary. If you can't get a huge turnout on a Saturday, it's like a preacher on Sunday morning. If you can't fill the church on Sunday morning, you can't fill the church.
You can't fill the church. And seriously, reporters, just stop with your stories wishing for something that's just not going to happen. And I've seen the Bernie Sanders stories for 4 years. Young Jane Smith came back from school, and she's talked to her grandparents who are black voters who were going to vote for Hillary Clinton but are now going to vote for Bernie Sanders. They were going to vote for Joe Biden, but now they're going, no, it's not happening, okay? Like save it. Just save it. I'm getting tired of those stories. You're embarrassing yourself. All right, I've got that off my chest. I have seen those stories for 4 years, and it's getting old. He's also not expanding the electorate. Doesn't matter. Bernie could still win it all. He could have a huge Super Tuesday and run away with it. Steve Kornacki, before we get to all the numbers that show how Bernie Sanders, if he goes up 300, 400 points, could almost lock this thing down on Tuesday, thanks to Michael Bloomberg. Let's just talk about realities, about what we saw, okay? And I know when I suggested that Elizabeth Warren attacking everybody on the debate stage might not help her in Nevada, I was called a misogynist. I think she finished in 4th place. When I questioned her logic on the debate stage in the South Carolina debate, same thing. Oh, you have to be misogynist because you say that may not help her. Elizabeth Warren had a rough night again, all right? But that's not all. I want you to tell me, how do candidates like Elizabeth Warren, who get 5% of the black vote, or Mayor Pete, who got out with 3% of the black vote, or Amy Klobuchar, who got 1% of the black vote, you tell me, how can they win the Democratic nomination? Because I see no pathway forward for them at all. And it's time we start getting real, whether you're a Bernie fan or whether you're a Biden fan. How do they do it if they can't get even halfway through the single digits with black voters? Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.